I watched this dresser on Facebook Marketplace for a long time. I think she had $80 or maybe $100 on it. And I reached out after a while and said, hey, would you take $50? And she said, yes. It is gorgeous. It's completely oak with burled oak on the drawer fronts and on the top, but we could not figure out how to close these drawers, and the construction's very different than a normal dresser. And I said, I gotta walk away. I don't know how to fix it. She said, would you take it for free just to get it out of my garage? And I said, yeah. So I immediately started to take the hardware off. Now, look at this piece. You can tell it's very different. The construction was completely oak. The bottom of the drawers, sides of the drawers, even the back piece, everything is oak. I think this was handmade from a kit. It definitely wasn't factory made. It's really weird. Something just occurred to me. If I can't fix the drawers, then I'm simply going to sell it as is. So I don't think I'm going to clean it quite yet. I have inspected it really well for any type of bugs or worms. I don't see any of that. So I think I'm going to bring this inside and see if I can somehow shave the drawers down. I don't know. The first thing I wanted to make sure was that I had the drawers in the right place, and I didn't. They are so specific to this piece that even this drawer doesn't fit there. So I have them in the right place. I'm going to go ahead and mark them. So this is the one that's getting caught. This corner of the dresser is hitting this part of the, what I call the base. Because watch, okay, it's out. I put it in, and see, it got caught. I'm going to see if I can move this board right here over. You see where the arrow's pointing? That's where the drawer was getting hung up. I figured if I pulled this out, it would line up better. And as you can see, it would. See? No longer jutting out. I'll put a shim back there. We'll see if that works. Now, this is missing. And here it is. And I have to reattach this here for this drawer to sit on top of. But yeah, look at this. But look at it. It's held together with duct tape. This works. I'll obviously cut a piece and glue it. I just want to see if this is going to work first. See, now it's flush. Let's try. I think the shim there is fine, but I think I need a shim on the other side too. I need to bring this board forward. Let me try a paint stir on that side too. All right, fingers crossed. I'm very proud that I figured that out. All right, I'm gonna go to my miter saw. I'm going to cut some 5-inch pieces of paint stirs, several of them in case I need to do the same thing on the other drawers. And I will stain them, and then we'll glue them in place with some wood glue. Yes. So now when the drawer goes in, it's not going to get stuck on this because this is a smooth line along with that one. So naturally I went over to my paint stirrers. I have a ton of these. I love them. I use them all the time. Between the paint stirrers and some scrap wood, I was able to recreate the old piece. I headed outdoors to cut that little piece off on my miter saw, and then I glued it all together. I glued that in place, clamped it, and then I even put in a pin nail on the outside to further reinforce it. After a little wood putty and a sanding after it dried, you'd never know it was there. I'm going to be using both Ready Strip and QCS to show you how to strip this piece. Now, both of them are eco-friendly, so they won't hurt the environment. You don't need to dispose of them any particular way as you would with other chemical strippers, but you still need to use some protection. I still use my respirator and some gloves. They don't have to be heavy-duty gloves. I have the windows open, and we'll be using this fan to ventilate. I'm going to do the side first. I'm going to use my Ready Strip, and then I'm going to put it right side up, and I'll use this for the top. The consistency of the Ready Strip is like pudding, and I used a bristle brush to brush it on. Now, unlike regular chemical strippers, I can actually wash this brush out with soap and water and reuse it next time. I waited about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and then all I did was misted it with water. That's it, not mineral spirits, just water, and it slid right off. Y'all, this was so easy. It was so satisfying. The Ready Strip worked beautifully. Misted it with water again and got all those little tiny detailed areas. So easy. After that, I misted it with water again, and this time I'm using a steel wool pad. I think this was a number 2. Look how I got more of that product off. Oh my gosh, this product, Ready Strip, is fantastic. And then it was time to use the QCS on the top. You simply spray a good dose on. Now, even though I sprayed that second coat, you can see I'm struggling to get it off. I kept having to spray more to re-moisten the product and scrape. It was really difficult. Now, the last video I did, it was a comparison of several different strippers, and I'll put that link below. I did it on the drawers, and when I used the QCS on a drawer, it came off beautifully. So I don't know why I struggled with this, but I did. I used the Ready Strip for the rest of the piece. I ended up putting a second application of QCS on it and rubbing it down again with a clean, lint-free paper towel. Then I took a brass brush, which is safe to use on wood, and used it to get the rest of the product and the finish from the grain of wood on the oak that trims that burled top. Now, I use several things to sand. The burled areas, I think, is a very, very thin veneer, so I didn't want to sand it with an electric sander. I'm using a rubber contoured pad from this kit to sand the raised trim around the drawer. I'm using that yellow finger sander, which is great, and I also used a 150 grit sand pad wrapped around a block. But as you can see, the contoured rubber pad really helps me get around that raised trim. I then used 150 grit wrapped around a pad, and then kind of went back and forth with that and the finger sander to get all the gunk out from around that trim. Now, I did use my DeWalt rotary sander with 150, and you can't tell because I filmed this in time lapse, but I'm moving the sander very slowly and in the direction of the grain to prevent any of those pigtail swirls. Now you can see some of the original finish is still right above my sander, and I stop and I changed to a 120 grit screen, which really helped get the rest of that finish off. The wood on the sides is definitely different, and
when I was removing the finish on the sides, I was scraping up a lot of red tones. I imagine someone used a reddish toner on this to make it match the other pieces of wood, but this looks more like plywood in texture to me. I am not up on wood grain and all that, but it's very different. So I think I'm going to leave this as is. I will probably have to try to work on these pieces by hand.
This hide carbide scraper comes with different blades, and it was great to get the residual finish off those tight areas. After scraping what I could, this is the top. I used that carbide scraper there, but I also sanded it by hand with just a folded piece of sandpaper and that finger sander. It was a lot of hand sanding, a lot. Now at this point, the only sanding I want to do is with a 220 grit pad. And I ended up doing all of that sanding by hand. I was kicking up a lot of dust since I wasn't using my electric sander that's hooked up to my shop vac. So I was trying to do my best to pick up some of that dust as I sanded, and then eventually gave up. But isn't that it's satisfying to watch? It's great. Anyway, after I finished the 220 sanding, I vacuumed off the dust, then used a tack cloth, and then I was ready for the next step.
I'm finally ready to give it a paint wash. I'm so happy. That probably took 5.5 hours to sand since I primarily did it by hand. My fingers and my joints were so stiff, so I'm really happy to have that done. Now I want to preserve this raw wood look that I've created. But if I were to put any type of sealant on it, wax, poly, whatever, it would immediately darken the wood. So what I'm going to do is use a product that I have that I used years back. This is Dixie Belle's Voodoo Gel Stain. It's a water-based product and it's in their color Natural. And I tried a little test area right here. So what I want to show you is this provides enough of a barrier that once I do put a top coat on, it won't darken that wood back to that orangey tone. So as you see, I'm dipping my finger in a little bit of water and I'm putting it on an area. There's no Voodoo Gel Stain here, and you see how it immediately darkens the tone of the wood. We don't want that. So in this little test area, I put a little bit of the Voodoo Gel Stain, and now that it's dry, it has now created enough of a barrier that when I stick my finger in water and dab it there, it doesn't darken the wood. So once I apply this paint stain and allow it to dry, I can then add a top coat to preserve the piece without changing that wood tone. I forgot I needed to mist the piece first with a little bit of water to help the Voodoo gel stain, and a paint wash for that matter, to spread evenly over the piece before it started to actually absorb into the wood. I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is water in a very fine mist.
Those darkened areas right there are where I had started to use the Voodoo Gel Stain without moistening the wood, and that's where it just absorbed real quickly. So it did take some time, but I was eventually able to blend it in.
And I'm just using a paper towel. Now you want to apply this in the direction of the grain, and I'm going to keep spraying to make sure I can keep moving the product around to get it evenly distributed. Oopsies.
Now see that little speck on the far right at the bottom? I had a hard time getting that to blend in. I think I had to wait until the piece was dried and I lightly sanded it in that area, and I was eventually able to blend everything. But let's look at me doing the top and the drawers, because gosh, this really is a quick and easy process. If you do it right, Amy, you just have to moisten that rag really well and the surface before you start applying that Voodoo Gel Stain. See, look how quick and easy that is. In time lapse, of course. So again, it's just mist the piece with water, add the Voodoo Gel Stain. mist with more water, and then add the gel stain. You get the picture.
The front drawers look pink to me, and that is one of the issues I had with that Voodoo gel stain on a previous project. The other parts, the sides and the base, I think look good. So what I'm going to do is wash the drawers one more time. Now, Algonquin is typically what I use for a paint wash. Eucalyptus I bought by accident. I thought I was getting this one. I've done a paint wash with this one. And was disappointed because it was kind of green, had a green tint to it. But I think that's what I need for that. Green is a complementary color to red, which when you mix them, they turn brown. So I think that's what I'm going to do on just the drawer fronts.
My dear friend Shannon Wilcox came by the house, and I was telling her even with that second paint wash, I just thought the piece looked cold, and she suggested that I add this glaze into my poly before I sprayed my poly on. I didn't know you could do that. I learned so much from that gal. I'm sure y'all do too. She's over at Black Sheep House. She's phenomenal. I love her. Now it's hard to tell as I'm spraying it, but the added glaze really did warm up the piece. It turned out beautiful. Now, as many of you know, I'm using the proceeds from my channel and my furniture sales to help pay off our mortgage so we can retire early. So if you haven't done so already, please subscribe and leave me a message here to let me know what you think. Now, the other thing Shannon suggested was that I use a little bit of rub and buff. I had gilding wax to take these flat black handles I was going to use and pounce and kind of swipe it on to kind of warm up the hardware. Now, I really didn't want to do that, but I trusted her opinion again. And again, she was right. They looked beautiful. So I am now done. Let's take a quick look at what this piece looked like before and when I was done.